so many intricacies and nuances into what it takes to get something on the air from a sports broadcasting standpoint. And Brad Cheney, my guest today, knows a thing or two about how that can all be made possible. He is vice president of field operations and engineering at Fox Sports. And he is, yes, coming on the conversation platform, the Odd is Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, called tennis and other sports as well. And this is unlike any other interview, I guarantee you, that Brad has ever done. And he does a lot of interviews with various different networks and groups. But here we're going to explore his personal side. We're going to look at why life is fun for him, to what extreme he is an adrenaline junkie, and where his sons in life, where they are better at him in certain areas. Yes, we're going to go down that route, among other things as well. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here is my conversation with Brad. Well, I want to be in that man cave of his. A man that is always on the go. His IQ is off the charts. And how about that bandwidth, brain power that he has? It's off the scale as well. His title would give that away. Vice President, Field Operations and Engineering at Fox Sports. Brad Cheney is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor for Fox Sports Radio and work with other media outlets. Brad, you ready to tell your story? I'm excited. And as you know, we are going to dive into just as much about your career as your personal life. I see something about Dave Matthews Band behind you. I believe that's a pretty big part of your life as far as that music and going to those concerts. So we're going to have some fun learning about that other side of you, that human side. Thanks for being a part of this.
No, glad to be here, Bryan.
When you're around your kids, and if I were to ask them, Brad, what makes their dad a genius, what would they tell me?
Being around. I mean, it really is about being around and being there for the daily things. And again, obviously, as someone who travels a lot, it's being present as much as possible, in and through their lives. And so whether it's, skiing or shooting hoops in the driveway or going to the multitude of baseball games, but my two boys play at 11 and 9. As we've gotten into this kind of new world of travel at young ages for some of these competitive teams and things like that. It's exciting to be with them and see the joy and wonder in their eyes as they're playing something they like, playing with their friends, winning. Obviously sometimes losing too, but building that point up and having a lot of fun. And it's funny. My two boys being 2 years apart is still, you get to see a picture of them and they're almost the same size. And yet they're both extremely tall for their age to begin with. So it's really an interesting experience to be out there with them and watch them compete against us, myself and my wife as well, when we're in and around. But it's just fun to see, the world through young people's eyes.
They are spitting images of you, and I think you've heard that about a
Yes.
gazillion times. Brad Cheney is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So when you're with them after a baseball game, whether in defeat or whether in a win, what are you talking to them about as you're sort of digesting that game that they played?
No, we're talking about everything from, how well they did, how well the team did, because they're always positive experiences, win or lose, as you go through the day and do those things. And so, it really is, keying in on, why that at bat was good. And sometimes you strike out. But, one of the things that I've gotten, into both my boys' heads is that, it's about putting the bat in the ball. It's about putting the ball in play, but it's also, you're going to strike out doing it. But if you can drag the pitcher out to 7-8 pitches to do that, then you're much better off, because that's it's a more tired arm. It's less capability for them to go longer in the game. So it's those kind of pieces of finding those points of positivity to, guide them back to, it wasn't, yeah, you were 1 for 3, but it wasn't actually a bad game. Your one hit did something that really, really helped the team out. And also too, your other at bats might have let people steal some bases, do some things like that are important, that, got that pitcher out of the game in the third or fourth inning. These are fantastically nicer, shorter games at this point. Still, we're still at, the 6 inning mark for a baseball game. Although, now some of the pitch clock in Major League Baseball, I'm kind of wondering, how do we get, it's the same thing the kids are used to. They're getting up there and just throwing, which is fun. So
When you're watching these games of your kids, how often does sort of the thought of, well, this is how I would broadcast this, or if I were to do it at this location, this is the technology that I would use. It's almost like you can't control it. Those thoughts are flooding in, whether you want them to come at that time or not.
no, without a doubt. I mean, this is, these are the concepts we have. These are the relationships around what's going on. This is where I learn what works and what doesn't work in many cases, hanging out with the other dads, the other coaches. As you're doing these things, you start to, get nuance of what they watched and what they liked and what they didn't like. And it really helps guide what you're trying to do because, our goal out here as broadcasters is to bring the game to them the way they expect it to be seen, but also with the ability to get the knowledge that you'd only see if you were sitting there and had your ability in the first row to see what's going on and see the pitch call and see what's happening, on a football play and those kind of things that, nobody else gets to do. I mean, you look at access that people have and, we're really bringing them access that they can't get in stadium in many cases. And so, it's that goal of kind of tying that all together and understanding, what works and what doesn't. I know, last year we had the USFL, our first season, and, we're doing a lot of things that nobody else can do because we own the league. And so that was really exciting technologically for us to be able to put a drone out in the field and do those things. But also too, I got back very quickly from some people in text message, hey, by the way, you're making me seasick. So let's figure out how to find that kind of middle ground in bringing innovation and bringing that thing. Because the one thing is like, I never played football as a kid other than flag, touch football, whatever. I didn't play competitive football even at my size, which is kind of shakes some people up. Like, you played football. I'm like, nah, I didn't. You've been a great tight end. Again, I don't really understand what's going on, but I get the basics of the game. And so, to me, to be thinking about having a camera and a helmet and understand what that running back has to do in those 2 seconds when he gets handed off the ball and he makes 2 steps, he has to make a decision. Am I going left, right? Am I going center? Like, did the offensive line push people the way they were supposed to? Well, all that stuff. And so to get that imagery and get that stuck into people's heads is really important and is something that we found was very valuable to the people at home because they'd never seen what the quarterback pressure really feels like. I mean, we watch him get sacked all the time and it looks like it hurts. But like when you watch the guy get sacked, it's a whole other ball game, right in front of you.
The idea that you're changing the game with all the technology that you're doing with the USFL, and obviously another season is soon to come. You're excited for that with what you're doing at Fox. I feel like the way you think, Brad, is so unique, and there are so many smart minds in this business. You work with a lot of them, but this idea of you really honoring the imagination that you have, even from a child, we start as children and we have these childlike imaginations of what life is going to be like or where we want to be. How much do you sit in that mindset of imagination and what could be, and how much that is what has led you to where you are now based upon where your mind takes you and the brilliance inside?
No, it's really, you try and spend as much time, not necessarily watching TV, but thinking about what people want to watch and what would change the aspect of it, because there are so many amazing tools out there and things. And as we've kind of pushed on over time, and, I'm part of that kind of early generation of people that had Sega Genesis and PlayStation and those things that kind of really have developed. And now I watch my kids play and I just get absolutely destroyed, by the way, when I play any games with them, like whether I'm good at them or not. I can still kind of hold my own at baseball, but all the others I get just trounced on because they get how to game and it's part of their, their ability set. But also seeing what those games do and seeing the functionality gives you kind of that ability to kind of think through and go, no, this is the way they want to consume. This is the way they want to see things. This is the way they're used to seeing things. And that's, you see how much more has come out of Skycam in the last couple of years in football, from that aspect of like, there's a really great reason to be behind the ball. And one of the things we were able to do in USFL last year was bring it on the defensive side. Let's see what's coming at the defense. Like, we don't really see that. Like, that's not something that's kind of out there on a regular basis, but to see that team fan out, to see what the cornerbacks and the safeties have to do in order to cover wide receivers and cover the tight ends who just all of a sudden pop out and reappear in a play is just, it's really interesting to understand the entire dynamic of what goes on. And I think that people in many cases forget how much work goes into the behind of understanding, for our producers and directors, understanding play calling, understanding what's going on and feeling that kind of part of the broadcast and giving that back to the viewers. The same way, as you've seen over time, Joe Klatz of the world who come out and, like they're almost calling plays. Well, they're calling plays because they've studied these people so well. They kind of know what's going to happen in these situations. And it's become a much more interesting game and much more interesting dynamic, as you go through it. But all that comes back down to people sitting down and thinking about, what would I do now? If I had this thing, how would we cover this? How do we make these things happen? And one of the things I harken back to is, I came to Fox to help launch the USGA on Fox.
Sure.
And so, with Zach Fields and Mike Davis on the technology side, and Mark Loomis and Steve Bime on the production side, we sat down and tried to figure out, like, what do viewers really want to see? Well, what are the things they can't see? Well, no one can see the golf ball in the air. Like, they're the most amazing camera people in the world who cover golf. When you have to chase a small white ball, and even worse yet, when you have to chase a small white ball hit by a bunch of amateurs, that's a whole other ball game. Like, yeah. I'm an amateur, I know, and one of the lucky things, I get to play with a lot of these, high end professionals. A lot of our announcing team and stuff like that. During those times, I would get to play with them, and I'd get some real good tips, and I get a lot of shaking of the head. Like, how did you let that happen? Like, we've gone through this, Brad, like 4 times. Like, honestly, like, stop driving the ball left. It's not that hard. But they've been doing this for so long that that's what brings you to that point. But, we realized that kind of early on that we needed to have tracer everywhere. And why did tracer matter? Because you can't see the white ball on the screen, even in high definition, even in 1080p, even in all these things, it's tough to see. And with the pros, you know where the ball's going to go. For the most part, they're going to hit it down the fairway. Like, this isn't a lot of challenge that. You get some amateurs and you get, a little knee buckling action there, match play, and that ball's in the woods half the time, from that side. Don't get me wrong. They can then play it out of the woods perfectly and it's okay, unlike the rest of us. But it's finding that function and figuring out how do we show that to people to understand what just happened. Because not every event is the Masters or the US Open or any of these events that have hundreds of cameras on the course that can cover every shot of what happens and tell a story that's amazing. So, it's those kind of pieces that we try and pull in. And in many cases, they drive people insane until all of a sudden they realize that everybody's got to do it because you can't live without it. It's the Fox box all over again,
Knowing how much of an expert you are in the field of broadcast and technology, and knowing how high up in the pecking order, along with your colleagues, that you are in the field, how does it sit with you when you're on the tee and you hook a drive into the woods and you're thinking to yourself, I'm good at this, but then how do I handle maybe needing some help here when it comes to golf, and how your mind is able to sit and handle that aspect, knowing that you're really good in something. And then there are other parts of your life where, okay, maybe I might need an extra tip or two, and I got to sit with that. I got to live with that.
No, I think that's the most human part of being human, is that function of, like, you can only be really, really good at certain things. And it's repetition. It's being part of it. It's thinking about it constantly. It's doing those things. Like, I can think back to being a very good golfer in my early 20s as a freelancer. It was one of those games, like, I could go play 9, 18 holes in the morning, still make crew call in Boston, and, do video in the afternoon on a Red Sox game. Works out perfectly fine. That doesn't work out so well, as you move up in life necessarily. But, the beauty of it is that, it's being willing to ask questions. It's being willing to say you don't necessarily know, and figure out and delve into those answers and find them. And that's the important part of life, is that, in many cases, when you ask that question, you end up answering 3 others that you didn't even know, that the 2 others you didn't even know you needed answers to, but they came back and existed that way. And that's been kind of, the one thing I've been really lucky with across my career has been being with people who were willing to tell me what they were doing, explain what they were doing, explain why they were doing it. And it's a kind of a function that I've tried to pass on to everybody else. Like, just because I know things doesn't mean you shouldn't know them. My goal is to make sure everybody knows them. And that way, if more people know what we're doing, we can all move together as a group, positively and go forward. And as well, I can find more things for me to learn because I passed off my knowledge to others to make those things happen, and continue to get them to ask me questions on, hey, what if we tried this? Hey, what if we tried that? Let's see how that works. And in many cases, that's how you figure things out. And those answers come from everywhere. And I think that's the most important thing, is that it's being willing to understand and listen. And sometimes you can try these things out, and sometimes you have to wait a little while. But getting that kind of collaborative environment going where people feel free to ask questions, whether when the time is right, and those things can happen, is just, it leads to just so many amazing breakthroughs in everything we do as we go forward. And that's been the beauty of it, is I've been able to work with so many amazing mentors over time, and really understand, from the beginning of television. And I spent, a number of years at CBS, David Letterman, and being there with people who had literally done the first Daytona 500. They'd been to shuttle launches. They, like, you name the things. Like, you look back in television, 40, 50 years ago at this point, and when you worked for a network, you literally ran this cycle, and it's like, oh, presidential election. Oh, you're going to do both conventions. You'll do election night. Oh, and then on Sunday, you go back and do the NFL. And that's the way their lives worked. And to be able to have that kind of breadth of knowledge is just really amazing to sit and listen to. And there were people that I worked with there that were in their 70s. And to be honest, as good as or better than anybody else I knew, and still operating at that level. And that was just really amazing to see and be a part of for a couple of years in my early 20s, to be able to say that. And that's been kind of where I've been very lucky, is just being in places that I'm able to sit there and just pick people's brains and gather that knowledge, and build that kind of basis up as we go forward.
You do have a lot of knowledge when it comes to the Dave Matthews Band. I think you've gone to that concert and seen that performance 100 times, or maybe closing in on 100,
Yeah.
as far as how many times that you've seen that group live. How do those lyrics speak to you?
They're obviously just, there's so many albums that they have, and there's so much stuff out there that, and again, for anybody that works with me knows, or spent too much time in a car with me knows, it's playing constantly in my mind. Like, I just, there are a couple people that kind of, play the song track of your life, or so to say, and that's Dave Matthews for me. And really, the beauty of it is that there's such a large catalog. It's so diverse in what is out there, that you can find the thing that's going to pick you back up and push you forward as you go on. And I think that's always been important. It's nice. I've always done well and worked better, like when I'm in that kind of zone-ish work zone of things, of playing music and doing those things, because it does keep me moving and keep me motivated, even though it's not the main process. I can feel it and hear it, and it drives me through what's going on, as you get into those long days. And that's, look, unfortunately, that's what TV broadcasting is in many cases, is long days and long hours and short turnarounds. And having that kind of constant for me has been, I think, really beneficial over time. And the other thing that's just amazing about the Dave Matthews Band is that, the bootlegging community, and I'm part of that group that's out there sharing those live shows that are out there, is that, you really can dig through and find the best version of something, and have a conversation with other people who listen, or play something out. And we get caught on it a lot. One of my friends, Joe Carpenter, who's the lead A1 for Major League Baseball, was for the USGA and for college basketball for us, and as our consultant on USFL, was able to, like, he's obviously a very big music person too, and so we were playing games all the time about this and that. Oh, did you hear this one? Did you go on? And so there's that kind of group there that you find that's out there, and people who just kind of want to be relaxed and fun and enjoy life. And I think that's just been something that's been, really beneficial over time for me.
What do you learn and hear in a song when you hear it the 15th time that you didn't when you listen to it the first time?
Well, I mean, that's the amazing part about it, is that, obviously the lyrics speak a certain way. And I think over time, lyrics change and speak in many different ways. And so that really is super interesting to, what it is that's out there. And I was just listening to Sound of the Surrender album from U2 the other day. And to think that you can take an album and take songs and modify them just a little bit, and the meaning changes and the feeling changes, and to do those things. And that's been, the beauty of Dave Matthews and live capture has been, from that aspect, is that, each night it can be a little different. Each night you can add a little thing. Each night you can morph one song into another differently. And, it pulls at you just a bit differently. It picks you up, it holds you there, it moves you on. And so, from that side, it's really, kind of truly amazing to, to think about those things, and be able to play that, and know that, there are certain albums I go to on a regular basis, and there are other ones that are just great to be able to hit super shuffle on and have that come up and just, listen through and go like, wow, I haven't heard that song in 2 years in some cases. You listen to those things that happen. And so it's just really exciting to be able to do that. And then one of the things that's been a big bonus for me of being on the road was that, they have a Friday night concert series on Sirius XM. And so, on a Friday night, if I'm in a hotel room somewhere and, away from my family, I can turn that on and feel just a little more connected to everybody.
When you feel that connection with the music, and you talked about how that can be a pick-me-up for you, what are the words that you come across that resonate the most with you, where you feel like those are fuel for enabling you to pick yourself back up?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the true lyrics that kind of sits with me is "Celebrate we will, because life is short but sweet for certain." And again, it's not necessarily that, in Billy Joel land that we're, the good die young or something of that aspect, but it's really about, being excited about being alive and being excited about being with the people you are, because, whether you're actually having a birthday party or an actual party or a get together, but being around people that make you happy and are there to do things that are very collaborative and together is really what drives me forward and me up and makes it fun to go to work and spend 18 hours a day somewhere and do those things, because you're part of a group and a community that's really trying to do this really amazing event for whatever period that is. It could be a day, it could be an hour, it could be a week, and to drive yourself through those things, to have kind of lyrics that pick you up and explain to you that this is all about having fun out there. And, that's the goal in this. And that's, the thing that I found is that all of this to me is fun. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It's that thing of, I explained to my parents early on that, TV is as adrenaline rushy as you can get without having the possibility of killing anyone or being killed, which are two really beneficial things to my family, obviously. But as
Yes.
well, yeah. But it's just really, like the adrenaline of doing live television is just so exciting. And I don't care if you're doing college basketball, cornhole tournament, or, the Daytona 500. They're all exciting for different reasons, and they're all challenging for different reasons. And, it's about building that stuff up and making something happen in a place that most people would be blown out. The more I talk to people about, like, oh, you get to go to these events. I do get to go to these events. It's ridiculous. Like, of the places I've been and the people I've seen and the places I get to stand and see things happen are just mind boggling, from that aspect. But at the same point in time too, they go, wait a second, what do you mean you were there for 4 days? I mean, like the game was at 6. Like, no, we don't just show up at 6. Like, this is an 80 camera show. We're here for like a week setting this thing up to make this stuff work because of it. And you start to show those things off and understand it, and you realize that in the end, it's building blocks. But when you put a lot of building blocks together, it takes a lot of time and a lot of people and a lot of understanding and knowledge to make sure that comes off correctly and well, from that side. And I think that's the most exciting part. You get done with a really good game. And one I kind of remember back to, there are obviously a lot of them that sit in throughout your career of like things you go, that was amazing because of X. And we came out of Field of Dreams in Iowa the first year, Yankees, White Sox. And, just one of those things where, it was a rough week going in, had a lot, if you're in Iowa, you're in thunderstorm country, you're in the middle of a cornfield, it's hot, it's sticky, it's not necessarily fun, it's raining in the middle of it. So now you're wet and it's, muddy and all those things. And so, you know, we get to game day on Thursday night, and the sky is the most unbelievable looking sky you've seen in a long time because the storm came through and pushed it through, and you this golden purplish sky setting over a cornfield on a hill, and you're shooting it in 1080p high dynamic range, and you're just seeing colors you've never seen before on TV, and it's getting to people's homes even though they don't necessarily have HDR, and you're getting through this thing and you're going, this is amazing. And then the game becomes even more amazing. It's like scripts you can't write because you're just there and going, in some cases in broadcasting, you're there in an event and you are firing on every cylinder. Everybody's doing perfectly. The announcers, the production team, the tech crew, nobody's screwing up anywhere. Game is boring. Like that's where you get caught in some cases, and that's what happens. But that night we had the confluence of all the things. The players showed up, and the matchups were amazing, and the home run and the walk off, and you can't make these things up sometimes. But the most important part is everybody got together was you get back there and you're like, not only do we not screw this up, which is the number one thing, don't screw this up, but everybody hit on every cylinder and crushed it. And just to be a part of an event like that, that's one of those things. It's a top five in your life. Like you look through the things that you've done and you go like, that is a top five event that you kind of harken back to of like, like it really was everybody working as a machine together. And, in the end, it was, an amazing night of baseball that, honestly will never be replicated. Like there'll be others that are different or whatever, but that one night, everybody who worked on that show can walk home, including Major League Baseball who put it on and all those things and really walk home and feel amazingly good about yourself afterwards, and that you really achieved something that people were amazed by.
What else fits the criteria of being in your top five?
Without a doubt, the US Opens that I've done fit in that zone, from a challenging standpoint and taking something on from a beginning and going to a point of, we went from 2 small golf shows at like 18 cameras a piece to the US Open at 105. And to build it up and build it from, kind of scratch with a large group of really, really smart people was just something that, was out there. And you take that kind of challenge and that's just kind of amazing to think of, what you accomplished afterwards. It took a couple of years to do that and to really build it up. And I think the beauty of it was for me, in my top five is the last one we did actually Pebble Beach. And that was another one of those cases where other than the weather could have been a little better. It would have been the most spectacular thing you've ever seen because Pebble on a sunny day is just unbelievably immaculate. But it's, it's the Monterey Peninsula. So fog and those things exist. But everybody on that crew just, you got in, that was our 5th year at that point. And you got to that point and, there were a lot of naysayers in the early years. There were a lot of bad articles written. And again, not that we necessarily didn't deserve it, but, as you try and build a team up to do an event like that, when you're not doing events like that on a weekly basis is a really large task. And we had a lot of good people. And, I can't thank enough, to, Eric Shanks and John Entz and those people that stuck with us, and through that. And just, they knew we were the right group and the right team. And they knew that, that we were going to fire on all cylinders and really make it special. And so the last, 2 that we did, Aaron Hills and Pebble Beach were really there and was really exciting for us from that side. And so you look at that, launching MLB Network's another one, to be part of a launch team and build something from zero. Like I've been in a lot of these cases, MLB Network and, the USGA on Fox, now to USFL on Fox. It has really been those things that have been really exciting for me because you really are building something from nothing, helping to be part of that team that kind of really gels together, builds something and puts it on the air. And that's a special accomplishment when you get to do those things. There's a lot of sleepless nights, but when you get done to see that network go on the air the first time and get through that first year and do all the things that we did there, change the game in many cases. What
is the very first thing as a child that you built?
Trains, Lionel trains, still have them, still put them up every Christmas and do that thing. Like that's, one of those things that I grew up with, and they were my great uncle's trains. They were gifted to me at Christmas one year, myself and my brother, and they still exist. They still run. The beauty of that mechanical aspect of the world was there. I would say, when I was younger at Christmas, those things stayed up through my birthday at the end of February, in most all cases. Still to this day, I have them. I have new ones. I've introduced my boys to them. So it's one of those things like it's, that's where this kind of tinkering all started, for me was in that world. And so it was, it was a great place to play around and live your imagination.
What is it like reliving in a way your childhood through your boys?
It's, it's just so, I can definitely understand why my parents were happy. As to see what goes on and to see them develop and grow and learn new things and be able to do things that just, I mean, to be honest, let's be honest, they do things better than I do. And that's our whole goal in life, is to hope that, that they're better than you are. And so it's so much fun to do the innocuous things of reading books with them, to, playing video games and learning new things, and watch them do things that you get on there and try, and you're like, man, I grew up playing, in my mid 20s or so, playing Call of Duty or whatever. It was just kind of a fun thing to kind of like waste your time with. And I did it. And so like I figured, well, this is easy. My kids are playing Fortnite. I can play that. They're whooping me on it. So it's that kind of thing of like, it's still fun and it's still great to do those things, and see that kind of, spark in their eyes, those things happen, and be able to, put things together and build things and do stuff. So, it really is, for me, just kind of amazing to be with them and find that time to spend and build up as they continue to grow. And the new part is that, we just keep learning new things from them all the time. I mean, I was amazed by, the amount of PowerPoint my kids can do. Like, I didn't have
Wow.
PowerPoint until I was really working, but like these kids are in, third and fifth grade doing PowerPoints and stuff like that. So it's like, that's how they're doing presentation and stuff. And it's just, you really think about it and you go, well, yeah, I mean, they grew up with iPads. Like, explaining to my kids that like I didn't have a cell phone, until I went to college, and I was one of the few kids with a cell phone in college. It's just kind of like, mind blowing to them, from that aspect, because they just assume it was all there.
Brad Cheney is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. I want to leave you with this last question, because as you're talking about what you can build from the standpoint of work, and you mentioned what happened in Iowa, Field of Dreams, and the incredible production, and you've been behind great productions. But like you alluded to, there's this element at times where there's only so much that is in our control. Not everything is in your control. How hard is it to accept that in life? Not just necessarily in work, but the idea that there's only so much that you can possibly humanly control.
Look, it's one of those things that, depending upon the situation, becomes a very, difficult thing to accept, and takes time and takes, effort, and, takes talking it out with, family and friends, colleagues, depending, to kind of find that place and point that, you can understand, what you need to do to continue to move forward as things change rapidly in that kind of space. And so, whether it's, losing power on a compound, or whether it's, somebody getting sick or hurt, it's those things that really, kind of gel groups together, and kind of make things happen, in a more robust way. And I think that, the beauty of the people that I've worked to surround myself with over time, and I've been lucky to surround myself with over time, are people that understand that and have a goal set going forward to go, like, look, things are not going to be what we expect them to be. And I've always termed it to people that I work with as like the 80-20 approach. If we can get 80% of it right, we can adapt on the 20% that's not, that we don't even know is going to be a problem, from that side. And you can build in as much as you want into all these things, resiliency and redundancy and all those kind of different things. But it's all fun and games until the bus from the hotel getting to Shinnecock at the U.S. Open is an hour and a half late.
Oh, jeez.
Like, what, like, it's that game of like, you thought through everything else, but there was a manhole fire in New York City and they've rerouted all your data circuits, and you're on the satellite now for about 20 minutes. It's that game of like, you built these things in, but everything you do, is a building block on something else, and makes those challenges more real, as you go forward. And so that's I mean, to be honest, some of that is the fun of it for me, of
Yeah.
making sure that we've thought through these things. And I have amazing colleagues in Kevin Callahan and Mike Davis at Fox that, we can just sit there and we're playing the game on each other. Like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? What if this happened? Like, you're able to do those things, and it makes everybody better. It makes the whole team better as you start to think through those things. And as they see us do that, the group starts to do it themselves. And it's not necessarily self-policing. It's just, making sure that, we're ready to go, from minute one on that aspect. And so, we were at Belmont Racetrack yesterday. We take over the Belmont Stakes this year. And, it's just another of those pieces of like, it's been 20 years since I've done a horse race in reality. We've consulted some people on some things over time, but, we're back and, right back in the thick of things. And I think that's the way, I enjoy it. I know it's the way Fox enjoys it, where you start off with, let's just go after the biggest thing out there and just absolutely crush it.
That you have over the course of your career crushed it. And if your career was a horse race, you'd be a front runner the whole way. Brad Cheney is with me. And as we conclude this conversation, I have a couple things that I recognize. Life is fun for Brad. He's always learning. Very interesting story as far as his own childhood. And he has to grapple with the fact that he is getting schooled in video games by his kids. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Brad, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a lot of fun to hang out with you today, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.